Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to Changing the Questions.
Welcome.
This shit again.
Keep going.
The show where we take one question each week and answer it, I guess.
You're goddamn unprofessional for stopping in the middle. That's all I'm saying.
Uh-huh. All right, so joining me, as always, as you can already tell, is my usual host, Mike Miner.
Hello, guys.
And we have a special guest with us today, Mr. Daniel Peruzzi.
Hello, friends.
Doing a
You
little...
don't have friends. Stop it.
Wow. Doing a little three-way...
I'm salty today. I'm sorry.
A menage a trois of wrestling discussion because my voice is dying and I'm sick, so I'm going to let you guys talk.
Goddamn unprofessional. Stop
The
it.
subject of today's episode is a promotion we haven't talked about yet here
Strangely.
at TTU in any form or fashion, and that is TNA, Total Nonstop Action. Recently, they have been looking for new investors. People have been simplifying it and saying that the company is up for sale, which I guess in a way it sort of is, but the way it basically breaks down is that their old money marks, their old former backers, Panda Energy, seem to no longer be giving them an endless sum of money for which to do things. And if they don't find somebody else to invest in them, there's a chance that the TNA may not be around. And to be fair, we have said this how many different times. TNA has been, quote-unquote, on the verge of death for 10 years.
And it's not just us. It's a lot of people.
Everybody.
It's crazy. And like you said, about 10 years, but they kept getting that money.
So the
Hey,
question...
Ted Turner, if you're listening to this, unlikely, take a look at them. See what you can do.
All right, so
But do we want them to live? I don't know.
the question that we are going to be discussing today is, can TNA be saved? This company has gone through so many different transformations and changes over the last 15 years of its existence. They were, 2002? 2001 or 2002 they started.
2002, 2003 with the weekly pay-per-views.
Yep.
Every week you pay a little bit of money, you get a show, and a lot of people were talking it up and recommending it. And if I'm not mistaken, their show Impact, I think it was at the time, still Impact, it went to Fox News Network.
Fox Sports.
Fox News
would have been really
Yeah.
funny.
Well, it seems like it should be on Fox News. Jesus
I'm
Christ.
Sean Hannity for TNA Wrestling.
Wow, where did that come from? Oh, Fox.
Yes.
Well, it might be because both of them have been terrible, and Fox News was always terrible. TNA just kind of grew to be terrible, so maybe that's where I was getting that from. But Fox Sports is where they started from.
It's been so long that people kind of forget that when TNA first came around, at least, maybe not when they first came around, when they first started on weekly television, when they got kind of out of their pubescent period of the weekly pay-per-views, they were viewed as pretty in a pretty positive light.
Oh, absolutely.
You had guys like AJ Styles, Samoa Joe there, just a lot of the Christopher Daniels,
Low-key, Amazing Red,
Kazarian, Loki, just a lot of names there, and it was viewed as really kind of like the scrappy underdog promotion.
You know what? Before I forget, Ron Killings.
Yeah,
Sure Truth. He was a huge name.
TNA managed to use Ron Killings better than anybody had. Ken Shamrock was an early champion of theirs.
Yeah, first TNA, not TNA, but NWA champion under the TNA banner. Ron Killings was another NWA champion under the TNA banner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was back when they were still with the NWA, which they are not now. Yeah. They have separated from them.
Formerly known as NWA TNA.
Yes.
Before dropping the NWA after a while.
They dropped the wrong three letters.
Yeah.
That's what they did there. Okay, so they've gone through a lot of different transformations and a lot of different changes, and now they're at the point where... All right, so Dan, you're less of a global fan of wrestling. You kind of focus more on WWE. When you hear TNA, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Meh.
There you go.
It's not nothing overly negative. Just TNA's that other one that just hasn't been able to get its footing fully.
Okay.
Like it's been close a few times, but
okay,
the little bit I've watched, it's just
When you hear Ring of Honor, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Better quality wrestling.
Okay. So that's the thing, is like, even though you don't follow things as closely as you do WWE, when you hear other promotions, New Japan, kind of a similar thing comes to mind. AAA, again, high flyers.
Yeah.
TNA is just kind of, they're still around. That's really the feeling that fans get. And
you can only go back to Samoa Joe versus Christopher Daniels versus AJ Styles so many times before you go, when is this stuff going to come back? When are they going to start doing things like this again?
Well,
and when are they going to make it the main attraction?
Well, really, I think the problem now is that people just they look at those letters and they
groan.
It's a joke. It's kind of a laughing stock because they remember the Hulk Hogan stuff and the Vince Russo stuff and the Eric Bischoff stuff. And I think the thing, ironically enough, that torpedoed TNA's credibility was when it tried to really directly compete with WWE because they were doing like good things there. Kurt Angle was there; he was doing very well. They were having a lot of good feuds and good storylines, and then they decided, well, we need to bring in all these big names, so we're going to bring in Hulk Hogan and Scott Hall and Eric
the
Bischoff.
Mafia.
Yeah, and then they just basically turned it into WCW Part 2 in terms of just they took the company over. Their ideas were ridiculous and outdated and terrible, and that really kind of completely kneecapped the company and took away all momentum it was gaining up until that point.
Do you remember when Hulk Hogan first was announced? As far as
I remember it, but not specifically.
There was a time when, TNA was trying to go head-to-head with WWE.
Yeah, on Monday night.
It failed miserably. Podcasts. A lot of what they did was focus solely on Hulk Hogan, him going in the limo and riding along, and they focused a lot on him. And for whatever reason, they thought this is going to jump numbers. I can't blame them on one hand. On the other hand, it's Hulk Hogan less than 10 years ago. I mean, he had his time, and they made a huge deal of it. Why not focus on your current-day stars?
Yeah, they
tried to get them over. They tried to get Hogan over, an inactive talent at that time, more than their current talent.
They threw all of their chips into old wrestlers that people remembered 10 years ago instead of building up the people that they had on the roster and making them established and prominent and then trying to bring those people as the ones who are going to take the fight to WWE, if you will. And
that's not sustainable. It's like any other professional sports team, either growing their talent naturally or hitting the free agency market every week or every year, and they're paying more money than they should for aging stars, and it's just not a sustainable, successful model.
Not that they didn't have their merits. Somebody like Kevin Nash had his merits as far as not as so much as an in-ring performer.
He would have
been
been fine backstage,
but a lot of the skits that he did were funny, and it's questionable with some people. But if you look back on it, some of them are pretty entertaining. But do you need him in the ring all the time? No, not really. But you don't
need Kevin Nash in the ring ever
from
from this point forward. Not now.
Not now. Not even back then, really. But he was pretty entertaining around that time. Sometimes
like I said,
they needed that.
He may have been a good personality, but the problem is that TNA tried to focus on the entertainment, and that took away from what they were good at, which was the wrestling.
That's exactly it.
Lack of identity, you want to call it?
Well, they tried to pretend to be something that they weren't.
And they tried calling out. They tried calling out the competition how many times, and it shoots them in the foot.
And the problem is
they're ignoring them, and they look like chumps.
And not only did it not work, but it not worked and tarnished their name and reputation. So anything they've done since then,
you got to think of it this way too. They also were picking up, like we said, a lot of former WWE talent. So how does it look with your company trashing the competition, trying to bring them down, and you're picking up all these former stars from that promotion?
Yeah,
it makes you look like it makes you look like a huge hypocrite. It makes your company look like it's run by a bunch of huge hypocrites. And furthermore, I can't come down on a lot of the talent because somebody like Sting was dependable for as long as he was there. He was fine. Like, you didn't need a Hulk Hogan. Sting was just fine. Booker T coming along it should have been better than it was, but whatever. That's neither here or there. He's a tremendous talent. But you got guys like Scott Steiner, who are well past their prime. Back in his day, he was tremendous. You got Kevin Nash, as we mentioned. He might have been entertaining, but come on. Kevin Nash, within the last 10 years...
But the thing is, when you have guys like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and Loki on your roster, you should not be having wrestling matches with Scott Steiner.
Exactly. Bobby Roode. Even somebody like Bully Ray,
and that's what I wanted. Thing. That's what I wanted to get into.
Yeah, I was going to get into that.
It seems that from that point they transition into we're going to be the kind of give a more mature product. But when they did that, they just kind of made increasingly stupid storylines and angles with the Aces and Eight stuff, with all the way up to Braun pushing Mickey James in front of a train.
What did we wind up calling? You all right? You gonna live?
I'm fine.
Anyway, I remember us watching those shows on Thursday night, talking about the ongoing saga of Aces and Eights. It was just terrible, terrible television, and it didn't really work for anybody. The only good thing that came out of it was Bully Ray.
Yeah.
Bully Ray was one of those characters that emerged from a trash heap, so to speak, and was very successful in what he did. But unfortunately, nobody was really watching it.
That's just an individual talent who has the ability to play, any role you throw him in.
Yeah, and the competition.
So that's that. And to go back to the lack of identity thing for a little bit, we talked about, or we didn't say the 6-sided ring, then 4-sided ring, then 6-sided ring, and when they switched to the 4-sided ring was when they were competing with WWE. Or trying to, at least. Well, it's like, again, you're gonna. It goes into the same point with you're gonna trash the talent that you're picking up. You're gonna trash the company. Then you're gonna do the same thing they're doing. And Hulk Hogan even cuts a promo. If we want to be taken serious, we gotta do the regular looking ring, brother. Like, okay, you're gonna say all that, but then you're gonna trash talk them.
You know what?
Try to trash them in the same thing. And shoot yourself in the foot.
I was okay with the 4-sided ring. I wasn't really high on the 6-sided ring. It seemed kind of gimmicky to me, even though it's more of a mainstay in Mexico, and that's fine. Fine, whatever, bring it in. If it works, it works. But it seemed more like, oh yeah, look, we're so different, we're going to try a 6-sided ring.
Well, no, the 6-sided ring had a purpose because they were centering it around the X Division at the time.
Yeah.
And a 6-sided ring gives you more angles for cruiserweights to do funny things off of.
Which is fine. But they seem to make it more of a gimmick than anything, I think. I was also going to mention match length a lot of the times. I remember probably 5-6 years ago, if that, there was a lot of people keeping track of how much in-ring time there was on these shows, 2-hour shows. Sometimes it'd be 15 minutes. That's pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. You got guys that, gimmicks that are winners, like Abyss, I thought was great. And then you got him speaking, and then you got him doing the Joseph Park thing, which was unintentionally entertaining, but whatever. That's neither here nor there.
So
wow, there's just so much I could talk about.
There's a lot of stuff.
Oh, you know what? Before we go anywhere else,
all right.
Jeff Hardy, the thing that really turned me off with them was I can't recall the pay-per-view at the moment. You might recall it, but Jeff Hardy was completely trashed out of his mind.
Yeah, he wrestled Sting, and then they had to wrap that match up.
They had to wrap that match up very quick. That was probably a PR nightmare for them because they had to offer free TNA online content, and basically I think they had to refund money. They wanted to refund people's money because of that, and that whole fiasco. And then within a year or two later, I can't really recall because it's such a freaking blur with them sometimes, they got Jeff Hardy doing a redemption storyline. I'm sorry, but if I were those people, and that pissed me off because you don't do something like that. That's very unprofessional. And then
the fact that he wasn't fired the next day.
Yeah, exactly. The guy was fired before by them, or he was let go, or he left, or whatever. And then he went back to WWE, and then he had to stay clean, or else he was out on his ass.
There was more time in that match spent by Jeff Hardy trying to figure out if he's going to throw his shirt into the crowd than actually any kind of wrestling.
Yeah.
There was 2.5 minutes of
and then there was like I said, the redemption storyline. I'm sorry, if you're going to do a redemption storyline with Jeff Hardy, I wouldn't place him as your champion. I don't care how clean he was. He screwed up Royal that time. I'm sorry. You're risking my company. That's it.
All right.
You're not going anywhere.
So we have talked plenty, and could probably continue to talk plenty about the sins of TNA. But that's not what this episode is about.
Can they
turn it around? What do you think? We'll start, Dan, what do you think?
Dan, go ahead.
I think it might be too much. I think anybody going up against WWE or still trying to is just they're too strong. There's too strong of a foothold with them. There's just no room for anybody else to compete right now. Somebody could, but when you have that back reputation that TNA has at this point, you're digging yourself too big of a hole right off the bat. And with them losing Panda and losing, they keep getting second chances, and we said earlier, they're still around. How are they even still around? At some point, they're going to run out of options. They're going to run out of ways to try to stick around, and it's just, I think they've won too many times, messed up, to where it's just not recoverable at this point.
Second, third, 40-second chance, 50-second chance. It's like Republicans trying to repeal Obamacare. It's pretty bad. But
what do you think?
What I think is, can they be saved? Weirdly enough, I think they can be saved. I think they can turn things around with the right investors, with the right creative staff. I think it can be turned around. But That's if they find the right investors. That's if they get the right creative staff. Because if they don't, they're dying soon. It's not going to happen anymore. And, they've got the talent. They've got somebody like EC3. They've got, even Matt Hardy. He's been on a roll lately. Eric Young's always been reliable. You got Bobby Roode. James Storm is back in the mix. You've got a lot of talent that can go far. Even, the women's division's always been solid. You got Awesome Kong.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah,
Not anymore.
I just had a, blip in my brain for a second there. Goodbye, Awesome Kong. We'll see you later. But can they be saved? I'm gonna be optimistic and say it's entirely possible.
Okay, so
likely, I don't know. What do you think?
So if it's a question of whether or not they can compete with WWE, the answer is unequivocally no. There's no fucking way. Never, ever, ever. But like Dan said, that's kind of true for most anybody. Ring of Honor is never going to compete with WWE. New Japan is probably the only people who ever be even remotely close, and they're not.
And I was going to mention that they're not going to go head to head with them unless they bring their product over domestically and start touring. But even so, I can't see it.
The question is whether or not TNA can be a self-sustainable company and not die, or not always be on the verge of death.
Let me mention one more thing. If they stop trying to compete with the competition, do your own thing, come up with some decent storylines, come up with some enough time for wrestling, Jesus, it's a wrestling
Here's
company.
the thing. I think if you took all the pieces, all the roster and the history and whatever, and you could completely divorce it from that name, I think there's a good shot. But I just think those 3 letters, it's too much to get over. And I just don't think that they'll be able to do it. And I think that maybe TNA's closing will lead to something else coming out of it that might do something positive.
Always does.
And have a good impact, but so to speak.
Well, that's one thing they
but
try
I just
to do.
don't think TNA can do it.
That's one thing they tried to do a couple of years ago was go from TNA to, we're going to be known as Impact now. And, it could have worked, but it really did. They reverted back to, basically being known as TNA Wrestling. Impact was fine on its own, but no matter what it's called, if it's not good, it's not good. It's not going to work. The fans are not going to get behind it. You have niche fans, that's fine, but...
And that's the thing, it was what do you think of when you hear TNA? That Jeff Hardy debacle is the first thing I think of when I hear TNA. When that's the backdrop for what you're thinking of when the name comes to mind, you're just in too big of a hole.
I'm still discussed to this day about that, especially when they gave him a second chance, third chance, whatever. It's just, it's reprehensible behavior when you have a whole roster of talent that would kill to be in his position, and he screwed up so royal that you had to give money back to people because you said this guy is, he's the cause of this happening, and we're sorry.
Was that the moment they were no longer savable?
Jump the shark moment, maybe.
No, I mean, there was times before that it was very questionable.
But was that the straw that broke the camel's back?
For me, I think it might have been. I mean, they had some great moments. Austin Aries winning the championship, but that's another thing too. Is hot-shotting the championship between a bunch of different talent. I mean, you have Magnus, Austin Aries, Bobby Roode was a great champion. James Storm held it for like a week. Eric Young, Lashley. I can name off name after name, and it's just like, what are you doing? Try to get a couple of guys. You don't have to slap it onto, a bunch of guys and hot-shot it around to try to make it work. Stick with somebody, see if it works. If it doesn't, move on.
Now, I mean, with all that being said, I hope I'm wrong. I hope they do turn it around. Competition's good. It's good for the industry in general.
But like you said,
I just think that there have been so many mistakes that have been made on the part of that company that they're just not able to recover.
Somebody can learn from it. And you know what? Like you said, there was a time where one company, WCW, they failed.
Yep.
ECW just couldn't keep up as far as their financials go. But you know what? Look at the modern landscape. You got Ring of Honor. You've got TNA. You've got Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. You've got, 2CW just closed down, but that was on their own accord. You got, you even have NXT in WWE. It took a long time, but you got that. Blanking out for a moment here, but yeah.
In any case, like the
mean,
landscape is good. The landscape is healthy. I just force somebody to subsist and do well, and Ring of Honor is kind of doing that.
Jersey All Pro,
but TNA has made they flew too close to the sun, and they're paying for it, and I don't think it can ever be fixed. All right,
I agree.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Change the Questions. I'm going to try and get through this outro without dying of coughing.
I believe in you. Believe.
Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you are listening to this on iTunes, be sure to leave a 5-star review, saying some nice words about us. If you want to send us any feedback, you can do so at changingthequestions@gmail.com, or you can check us out on Twitter at changingtheqs, which is at changingtheqs.
Yes.
Also, by the time you hear this, our website will be launched. You can go to changingtheqs.com, same way as the Twitter handle is spelled out. We will have all of our videos and audios there, as well as some articles written by yours truly, as well as Mr. Miner, and some other people we're bringing in for that. So be sure to head on over to changingtheqs.com. Facebook, like us on Facebook. We put up all of our stuff there as well. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Change the Questions. Hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to check out our other shows. Time Warp on Monday. Of course, Change the Questions on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Booking a Better Wrestler on Wednesday. And Let's Play TEW on Friday. For Mr. Miner.
Thanks, guys.
For Mr. Bruzy. My name is Paul Laporte. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Adios.